In 1943, war was everywhere. Cities burned, nations were bleeding and divided. Across Europe, German soldiers were told one terrifying truth. If captured by Americans, mercy would not exist. They were warned of brutality, starvation, and revenge. From letters sent by German POWs to their families, one recalled,
When we surrendered, fear followed us like a shadow. None of us believed we would be treated as humans once we fell into American hands.
what awaited them instead was something they never expected: America. Vast, distant, and seemingly untouched by the horrors that were consuming Europe. It was a place of order, industry, and calm, yet it carried the weight of a nation at war. From the moment German POWs left Europe, their journey across the Atlantic would redefine their understanding of the world. The Atlantic itself seemed endless, fog and waves challenging the ships that carried thousands of men to a future unknown, yet remarkably humane. Millions of German soldiers laid down their weapons in North Africa, France, and Italy. They expected prison and punishment, but not a journey across the Atlantic. Over 370,000 German POWs were sent not to Europe, but to the American heartland: Alabama, Texas, Arizona, Nebraska. Many arrived expecting suffering. Their first shock came almost immediately. At Hoboken docks and train stations, one POW later recalled,
I stood at the station and saw cars, lights, homes. I could not believe this was true America, not some trick.
This was not what propaganda had promised. Men who had prepared themselves for the worst were instead met with orderly stations, welcoming faces, and a surprising level of comfort. The streets, the cars, the lights, even the way people moved, all spoke of a country functioning in contrast to the devastation they had left behind. As they boarded trains to distant camps, the realization set in. The war might have defeated them, but the human dignity in this country remained intact. The Atlantic alone took weeks, and yet even in cramped ships and trains, the POWs began to glimpse a world entirely unlike the one they had known. Germany told its soldiers that America was weak, undisciplined, unindustrialized. The prisoners saw a nation working at full speed. Factories ran day and night, trains moved endlessly, farms stretched farther than the eye could see. For men from bombed cities, America felt unreal. Some prisoners thought the abundance was staged, but the food kept coming: meat, fresh bread, milk, coffee, sugar. One POW recalled decades later,
Life within the camps was so comfortable. The food and clothing were better than what many of us had at home.
Another joked he gained so much weight he barely recognized himself. In Germany, civilians starved. In America, POWs ate better than frontline soldiers. The most vivid memory for many prisoners was Christmas. American officers and cooks spared no effort. The camps were decorated, trees erected, and tables filled with roasted meats, pies, chocolates, and fruits, luxuries the men had not tasted for years. They were bewildered, unable to reconcile the abundance with the war raging abroad. One prisoner described the scene.
On Christmas Day, the tables groaned under turkey, ham, and sweets. I could not believe the Americans were giving us such a feast. We were supposed to be the enemy, yet here we were, treated like honored guests.
Another recalled the sheer confusion.
We looked at each other in disbelief. In Germany, our families had nothing to eat, yet here we were given the best food possible, and everyone was smiling.
Even the smallest details, a slice of chocolate, a cup of fresh milk, felt surreal.
One man remembered sneaking glances at the American guards, half expecting the feast to vanish, but it did not. Instead, the kindness and abundance were real.
It was almost too much to take in. We were used to hunger and fear, yet here we were, eating better than most people back home. It was confusing, humbling, and strangely comforting all at once.
That Christmas, the prisoners experienced a small miracle: warmth, nourishment, and humanity in a time defined by suffering. For many, it left a lasting impression that would redefine their view of the enemy and of America itself. Daily life in the camps allowed prisoners to experience a standard of living they had never imagined possible, from the well-maintained barracks to the steady supply of clothing and blankets. It was a stark contrast to the destruction of their home cities, where air raids had left ruins, shortages, and constant fear. POWs quickly noticed that the rules were strict, yes, but humane. They had boundaries, but within those boundaries existed comfort, order, and an unexpected sense of freedom. Meals were served with care, barracks were maintained, and medical attention was available. The disparity between life in Germany and life in the American camps slowly began to challenge their beliefs and their fears. The camps were fenced, guarded, and secure, but they were not cruel. The U.S. treated prisoners as humans, not enemies. Prisoners worked on farms, in lumber yards, and on roads, and were paid 80 cents a day, enough to buy toothpaste, stationery, cigarettes, even Coca-Cola, some choosing ice cream. Inside the camps, life was rich. There were orchestras, plays, soccer leagues, newspapers written by POWs. At Camp Aliceville in Alabama, professors taught college-level courses. English became the most popular subject, not required, but prisoners wanted to understand the country they found themselves in. A report noted,
The English class had the longest lines. We wanted to understand the world we found ourselves in.
In this structured life behind barbed wire, the POWs discovered routines, education, and even creativity. They wrote newspapers, performed plays, and learned instruments, building a community despite the war that had brought them here. Sports became a way to pass the time and maintain morale. Soccer leagues, baseball games, and informal matches with guards or local civilians helped bridge the gap between captor and captive. The experience revealed an unexpected humanity in the people who had taken them prisoner and challenged the assumptions drilled into them by propaganda. It was a strange mix of captivity and liberty, of confinement and opportunity.
Many POWs later said this changed them. They saw newspapers criticizing the government, people arguing politics freely, workers complaining without fear. This was democracy in daily life. One POW remembered,
We played ball with local kids, and they offered us candy. I never thought the enemy could be so kind.
The greatest shock was not the food or factories, but dignity. No shouting, no beatings, no loyalty demanded. They were prisoners, but not broken. As they worked the fields, repaired roads, and helped harvest crops, they realized the ordinary people of this nation lived without fear of arbitrary punishment, without the constant pressure of indoctrination, and with a freedom to speak openly. For men who had grown up under totalitarian rule, this was a revelation. They saw that a society could operate without cruelty and still remain productive, prosperous, and strong. For some, change was quiet. For others, painful. Hardline Nazis tried to enforce loyalty. Some POWs were threatened for praising America, but the spell was breaking. U.S. re-education programs offered books, films, and discussions. Not all accepted it, but many listened. A U.S. Army report said,
We came to learn, not to hate. The lessons here opened our minds more than any battle ever did.
Years later, POWs returned, not as captives, but as visitors. Some spoke to American crowds and said two words they never expected to say: thank you. Günter Graue, in a 1953 Army interview, said,
I came back not as a prisoner, but as a guest. I wanted to say thank you to a country that defeated me without destroying my humanity.
The lessons of camp life, work, education, and humane treatment created lasting impressions. The combination of comfort, respect, and exposure to American life quietly undermined the ideology many had been forced to embrace. Beyond education and labor, it was the small, almost imperceptible acts that left the deepest marks. Simple gestures, a cup of coffee offered without suspicion, a shared cigarette, a conversation about music or books, shaped perceptions in ways that battles never could. POWs remembered being taught simple tasks with patience, being offered reading materials that encouraged thought instead of obedience, and having opportunities to express themselves creatively.
One afternoon, a guard showed me how to properly care for a garden plot. I was amazed that he would take time with someone like me. It made me think differently about America and Americans.
Others recalled the quiet generosity of neighbors who visited the camps during holidays, bringing small gifts or letters from home. These moments, seemingly trivial, became emblematic of a society that valued human dignity.
I never expected anyone to care for me in a place where I was supposed to be an enemy. Yet I was treated with respect. It was confusing and overwhelming at first, but it changed me.
Even routine exchanges, greetings in the morning, shared laughter over a simple mistake, gradually revealed a pattern of trust, kindness, and humanity that contradicted everything they had been told about Americans. The most lasting impressions were the lessons of humility, empathy, and perspective. POWs who had arrived filled with fear and suspicion began to reflect on the contradictions: a nation at war yet capable of generosity, prisoners treated better than civilians back home, an enemy that fed, educated, and entertained them rather than abusing them.
I kept thinking, if this is what they do to prisoners, how must they treat their own citizens? I was confused and ashamed of what I had believed. I never thought kindness could be part of war. Yet here, every day, we saw it. It forced me to question everything. Even small gestures, an extra slice of bread, a smile, a friendly word, taught me more about humanity than years of training ever did.
These lessons were quietly revolutionary. POWs began to carry them internally, questioning the ideology they had followed and the worldview they had been taught. They returned home with stories not of humiliation, but of dignity, stories not of brutality, but of extraordinary human kindness. When the war ended, the prisoners went home, carrying memories of abundance, not ruin, of kindness, not cruelty, of a nation that defeated them without dehumanizing them. Not all fell in love with America, but many did. In post-war Germany, those memories mattered. Sometimes the strongest weapon in war is not force, it is example. They came expecting hell. They found a country, and it changed them forever. Reflecting years later, Günter Graue said,
Years later, when I saw Americans rebuild Europe, I remembered how they treated me, and I knew something in me had changed forever.
Their story reminds us that even amidst the violence of war, humanity can survive. The power of kindness, dignity, and example can leave marks far deeper than any battle. It is a legacy of empathy, courage, and the enduring possibility of change. Leave us your thoughts and opinions in the comments and subscribe for our next episode.